Marketing That Works is the podcast for business owners who want to move their brand forward so that they can bring in more sales and clients. I'm Danielle Harris, and I'm bringing you what I know from more than 12 years of experience in traditional and online marketing. I have created marketing strategies for businesses of all sizes, from multi-million-dollar corporations to early-stage online businesses. Remember, some marketers chase fads. I believe in mastering the fundamentals. Today, you all are in for a treat. I am joined by my client, Kemerlin, who is a personal development and leadership coach who specializes in helping women detox from limiting beliefs so that they can confidently pursue the careers of their lives. And when we talk together today, really, we're just getting to the root of how really owning and knowing your story can just change the way that you think about yourself, think about your business, and think about how you help people. We dig into how she needed to uncover her story for herself again. This is something that she does all the time for her clients, but she needed to take time for herself to look back over all that she's accomplished and realize that she knows what the F she's doing. Like, that's really what it comes down to. Like, she was reminding herself that she knows what she's doing. She has something that is so great, so powerful that she has to share, and she's just not pulling it out of nowhere. She knows what she's doing, and it was only because of the fact that she was able to go through her story and pull this out, and it made her a better marketer. It made her a better business person. It made her a better coach because she was able to go through and know her story and pull that out in such a way that her confidence was just increased to the highest level. So I cannot wait for you all to listen to this conversation with my client. And y'all, you're in for a treat again. I love her. I love listening to her. You're going to get so much out of her conversation, and I can't wait for you all to get all these gems. Today's episode is going to be so good, everyone. I am joined by an amazing, fantastic past client of mine. I want to let her introduce herself for you all, but it's going to be a good conversation. Every time I had talked with her on calls and everything, I was just like, this woman's amazing. She's fantastic. I am so pleased to be joined with you. So why don't you introduce yourself for everyone?
Hi, my name is Kemerlin Richards, and I am a leadership and personal development coach for women in leadership. And so, like Danielle said, I was a past client of hers. And so I feel like after working with her, I really solidified who I wanted to work with and how I wanted to deliver my expertise. So I am so happy to join in on this conversation today and get into a little bit of the work we've done and even talk about my story even further.
Yeah. Okay. So I remember when the very first time we talked and you were so adamantly clear, like, I need to have my own voice. I am not trying to sound like anybody else. I've tried that before. I've done that. You were so clear. You're just like, you're not going to have me sounding like this, like having all these templates or like all these other things. Like, she's like, I've been lost. Like, I need to find myself, my own voice. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was so important for me because I felt like that was something I had, when I wasn't thinking about it. Isn't that crazy? And so I made, before I made my pivot to actually solidify and say, hey, I'm going to do this coaching thing, I was on Instagram, doing my thing, saying whatever I was saying, and people was resonating with it. And so I knew that I wanted to offer more. I wanted to get back into leadership because I had taken such a long time, because I've been in corporate over 10 plus years. I've also held leadership positions for the nonprofit sector. So I've been in leadership for a long time. I've been the head of things for a long time. And so all of that experience and all of those stories and all of that was compounded, and I knew that there was more, and I was getting a bit lethargic and complacent with showing up online the way I was, even though people was digging it. I knew that on a purpose level, It really wasn't fulfilling. So when I came to you, it was like I had already gone through a few coaching uh, methods and stuff and hired coaches, and not that they weren't good. I just felt more, how do you say, overwhelmed, and it felt like, okay, you're saying what you're saying, but you need to say it like this. And I just like, I'm losing that freedom and that like ease of my voice. And so that's where I was when I came to you. It's like, it wasn't like I didn't know what to say. It was just like, okay, how's this thing going? Am I doing this thing right? Because I want to get back to the beginning, but in this new space. So I knew like nothing else but me would work.
Yeah, no, and that's so huge, just so important because I believe that everyone they have their own unique, their own personal style, and of course, like there are ways to like kind of like refine down, like or like really enhance and bring out what makes you special and what makes you unique. But trying to fit into someone else's box and way of saying things, like that's just really never going to work, especially with someone like you've mentioned it before. Like you have so much experience, you've gone through so much, you've been able to do so much in your story and your career, and like you're the only one that could really bring all of that to life. And so really, I know that when we were working together, it was just like, tell that, share that, like that's so impactful, that's so important. And just realizing like you have more than just like one story, you have so many, and there are ways that you can bring that out in a way, because like you just naturally talking, you said people were just, they were resonating, they were on board with it. So we're just like, okay, so how can we like tune that up? So it's just, it's more of you as opposed to just like, ooh, I don't know if I need to hold back, like I don't know if someone else's thing, they said this, that, or the other. It's more of, this is you.
Exactly. And that's where I was. That's exactly where I was. I was like, I'm here, but I need to be here, you know? And so I think I was kind of like in my head, I guess, like we all can get. And so I was just like, I wanted so much to have the business work right because it was important to me. But I came here to find my voice and just be more in touch with that again. But I also got so much more in return, like knowing who I absolutely wanted to work with. And I think that was a part of it too. A part of the disconnection with my voice, because I know coaching was where I needed to be, but I was still on the fence about the who. Like, who do I really want to just say, these are the people who I'm advocating for. This is who I want to help, period. And so with all of that said, I came and was able to understand my framework, understand who, and then understand my voice.
Yeah, okay. So you said like your framework and your who. I want to get into like your framework later. But like let's go into your who, because like you just yourself, you have such a fantastic story, and the people that you work with, just like I know that we spend a good amount of time just like going through like who those people are. So like tell the people, who are those fantastic women that you work with, and like how are you so uniquely equipped to help them?
Yeah, so I look at it like I was my first client, right? As I stated before, I had so much experience in leadership. After about a few years in this corporate position where I was a liaison and handling a multi-million-dollar contract, I was fired, right? I wasn't fired for skills. I wasn't fired for any of those kinds of things. I was just fired on a personal level because I would speak up and ask questions about certain things. I wouldn't necessarily comply with something that just didn't connect or make sense. I was, leading a department where I had people under me. They had people under them. So I look at it as after that particular incident where I was fired, and I was thinking actually about a conversation that I wanted to have a continual conversation. It's like, why do we wait until something traumatic happens to us to pay more attention to our value and what we have to offer? And that was me. And so when I reflect and looked back, I realized that I wasn't satisfied. I was unfulfilled in the position. I was underpaid. I was giving skills that I didn't really hone in and paid attention to because you're doing a job for someone else. I didn't realize the nuance of my expertise. And so with that said, there are so many women like me, unfulfilled in positions, ready to reconnect to their leadership in an authentic way, or ready to carve out a career plan in life that they actually want, not what they've settled for. And so I help women in leadership who are unfulfilled to confidently chart their purpose-driven paths, because it took me getting fired. It took me going, almost 2 years trying to figure out what happened, what's my thing, to really realize how much I had given up, as a result of being a part of somebody else's dream. And I know that there are so many women that were like me, and I look at myself somewhat like that bridge, to bridge those gaps in their leadership development so that they can really get on that path to purposeful work. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know that when we were talking, we talked in so much detail about who those women are, what are the different points along their own journey. And I know that another thing that we did is, how are those things parallel to your own story and your own experience of you've just been, I know something that we talked about a lot was being on autopilot. You just kind of go through, you just kind of experience and let your career happen to you. And I know one of the things that we did was like, so what were the times that happened to you, and what did that look like, and what were some of the moments where you're just like, oh, this could have been an opportunity for me to go out, but it took, that big shock of something. But how can you help people realize, like, before they get to like this big breaking point, that they have choices, that they have options? So tell me a little bit, like, how that was like, of being able to kind of like see the journey of your client and seeing how some of those things parallel with your own story and your own experience, and trying to figure out, like, oh, how do I tell this aspect of my experience?
Yeah, that was one of the major reasons why I got into personal development, because one of the things about personal development and the paralleling with my story, one of the things is that for personal development and women in leadership, it's more self-help. So it makes it look like it's something that they can get to later. And we're talking about the things like self-awareness, emotional intelligence, negotiations, all of those things that goes into those other skills that we need to manage our dreams versus just having a degree or just having a position, right? And I realized that because of those things, which led to autopilot, because of those things, I wasn't advocating for myself. I didn't recognize the signs to advocate for myself. I led with the mindset of, if I worked, if I did, it would be automatically rewarded. And that's not the case, And so while we were going through the process and we talked about autopilot, I also termed it like my process of undocumented success. I realized I had so much undocumented success, and it wasn't just about the things that I did. It was about the things that I did, the way I did them, and how I got results. What are those things? Because if you notice, like, you could go to an interview and you could say, yes, of course, I could do all of these things, and it can be much robotic. But what parts of you that you bring to the process, right, to make these things happen, either in a innovative way or a creative way? And those are the things that in conversation, in actions I did, but in conversation I couldn't relay. So I had to go through a process of just recovering my own undocumented success, and then also realizing certain gaps or emotional gaps, right? Or emotional expectations in the workplace that could stem from personal experiences, because autopilot is usually formed in two ways. It's formed through your emotional impact, or it's formed through your repetition, right? And so what is your autopilot saying? Autopilot is supposed to be a tool, right? Usually to make things be easier, but a lot of times we've created autopilot to be a coping mechanism. And so with that said, a lot of women in leadership are just coping and settling. So they're doing the work so disconnected from the who that they are. So I got into this portion of leadership because, one, I noticed that whenever there is a leadership issue, and it's not just a woman's issue, but that's where my heart is for women. Whenever there is a leadership issue, it's always centered around some issue in that leader's personal development. Not so much around like, oh, they couldn't do the job or they weren't adequate enough. It's a lot of times heavily focused around these areas. Certain decisions, or again, we go back to the emotional intelligence, or acting out of character, or, doing that one thing that kind of like just blows everything up that has nothing to do with the degree that you have. And so I noticed that the stories were the same as mine. I noticed how I spent years in corporate, and now that I'm here working through my own stuff, I really had to think about it. I really was stuck. I couldn't go back and say what I did. There's a problem there, and those are the things that led to the self-doubt, right? That led to the lack of confidence or feeling like an imposter, because I didn't really connect with the genius or the successes that I've already done, because I was working for someone else, but excluding me from the whole entire process. And so with my story, and then connecting conversations, even from women in my own family, connecting conversations, I realized that we met at an intersection. No matter the level of education, no matter where we were, we all met in this central place. And that was leadership gaps, which they call power gaps, which are personal development gaps. And women aren't getting that level of support. They're not being told that these are the things that's going to help you excel. These are the things that's going to help you make more empowered decisions about your career and your life journey, versus spending all of your time with your head buried in the sand, getting another degree, working overtime, working hard, trying to be seen, versus presenting your value in a different way. So, those are things that really kind of fire me up, because I love being that that support system that helps women to connect and fill those gaps. And so once they start filling those gaps, they can start talking about what they actually really want, and they can differentiate what they've settled for, right? And really make bold statements about what they actually want. And then we make a decision. So are we going to do it?
You all, these are the types of, this is how our sessions went. I was just like, look at her, inspired all day. And I know that when we went through,
I just got so hyped. I was like, oh,
yeah, I was just like, yes, do this work. She She's so fantastic, so amazing. And I know that like when we did this work, it was just like so clear that you had so much passion about what it is that you were doing to help these women, that you were so clear like these are the steps that they like need to take. And like I know one part of the work that we did was like saying like you need to share your particular experience with that so like people can see and know, because like you have this and you know all of these things and you're just like this wealth of knowledge, and also sharing that like, yep, I've been there too, and that there is a way to get out. But then going back to also that you had a process. I know when we first started, you were just like, I don't really have a process. I don't have any frameworks or anything. It's like really dependent. Like I don't have anything. And you walked me through every single time, and it was like a couple times like you've got a framework. Like tell me about like that realization, that light bulb moment, because you came at me so hype when you were just like, girl, I've got a framework. You were so excited about that.
Listen, like you said, I said it so many times. I swore up and down I didn't have a framework. I felt like I was just this. I just get in there, I see what the problem is, I make it happen, and that's that public administration masters and stuff that I have, because, you know, I go in, I zero in on the problem, we work it out. And then as I was talking, and see, this is the thing, this is why I go back to undocumented success. Mm-hmm. Like I had a brain or the way I presented myself was I solved problems. But the problem with me was I didn't consider how I solved the problem. Mm-hmm. I just got in there and solved the problem. I just got in there and worked. And that was me still recovering from that same mindset of even being in corporate, right? And you're working and you're like, someone's going to see it, but no, you need to see it, you know? And that was the problem, because when things change immediately, you won't be sitting out there looking like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? No, you're going to be so in tune with who you are, what you do, the way you do it, then you're going to know how to advocate and move forward, and what type of empowered decisions you need to make, right, to create a life or purposeful life for yourself. And so when I kept talking a few times, Danielle was like, there's a pattern here. And I'm like, for real? Like, what do you mean? And then
I know, I remember you were just like, we were just like,
and I'm like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Every single time. We're just like, so you did this.
Yeah, I was like.
And then like, tell me another one. And then we went through, I'm just like, every single time. It's like the same couple things that you do every time. Like, yes, every person is different and unique, of course, but you're taking them through the same core things. And you were just like, oh my gosh.
I was floored. I was like, what do you mean? And then like after we talked and I kind of named the stages, I was like, I got a framework. And it sent my confidence to the roof, because now it's like I kind of held back a little bit also with how I presented my services, because I felt like I didn't have a framework. Like I'm just helping people, and people want to know like what stage, and I'm like, I don't think I'm there yet. And I had been there so long ago that, you know, it was just about resonating, paying attention to what I'm doing with these people, with these women. And girl, like, you have a framework. And so I was so happy about that. I kind of like was on like cloud 9, because it was amazing to me, but then it also solidified more and more the work that I do is necessary, because how many women are out here just like, but I can't shake things up. I'm just going to have to settle for this for right now, because I'm not able to do this, that, and the other, when they've already done it and don't even realize it.
And that's the thing, like you yourself have to go back over your own story and your own experiences working with people to realize like, no, I know what I'm talking about. Like you knew that you knew what you were talking about. But like you said, like that confidence wasn't there, of just like, you just felt like you were making it up as you went. And it wasn't like,
Yeah, I
on one hand,
surely
you were
did.
just like, I needed to have a process. Like, other people have these frameworks and all these other things, and like, you were really just like, I don't know if someone's just gonna come to me and just like, yeah, like, we'll just figure it out. Like, that's like, you knew that you could help people and help them figure it out, but you were just like, but like, there has to be like some process because other people have a process. I don't have that. I don't know. And again, like I said, we went through your story, your experience, and I was just like, I'm taking down my notes. She's talking like, they all follow the same like 4 steps. Like, girl, you've got one. And I want to say, like, every single time you came back, every session after that, she was just like, well, since I got my framework now, and I want to say, like, and it was just all because, like, I'm always talking about, like, you need to share your story. That's going to have to integrate into it. And, like, from, like, a marketing side also, but, like, your own inner story. Like, you had to retell that story for yourself in your own head. Like, I know what I'm doing. I have a process. I know what I'm doing. And that just takes your confidence to a 10. Because you're just like, no, I'm just not bullshitting. I'm not just making stuff up. Like, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to take you through. Yeah. It's logical. It makes sense because I have all these stories. My own story, the stories of the people that I've helped, they all go to back up. Like, these are the steps that I need to take. And not just, like I said, not just from from a story perspective and from like marketing, like this, like going back over and reviewing and knowing your story is truly also helping you get your clients results. Because you're just like, no, I know what's going to come next. I know what part of the journey you are on because I've seen this before time and time again. So it's not just from a like, okay, like, yes, your marketing is going to get better because like you have this confidence, but also just like, I'm going to get people better results because I know where I'm taking you.
Exactly. And it made me feel so comfortable because, I'm not a completely personality type A, not completely, but I have those type A tendencies. And so I held back because I felt like being a person who believes in integrity, I said, I don't want people to feel like I'm just, making this up, or it felt like I was just making it up, though I wasn't, but I know exactly what to do for you and how to help you. And so putting that language there, physically seeing it and looking back, with someone outside of my head, Danielle, it's like, girl, stop it. You have a framework. And I'm just like, absolutely. So now I'm like marketing and stuff like that. So into my framework, I take you through this process and I know what to say because these are the process or the journey that they go through, because ultimately, that's where I was. The light bulb had to go off. Then I had to do my own recommitment to myself. So I said, oh my gosh. And so as I spoke about it and my audience received it, it's like you're talking to me. And I was like, absolutely I am, because I know. That's what it is,
No, but let's talk about that. People saying, like, you're talking straight to me. Like, Let's talk about that. Like, what was that experience of, like, when you were just like, okay, like, I have this confidence now. I know what I'm talking about. I have my things. Like, how did going into that, like, really change what was happening and what was going on for you in your business?
Well, it really helped me to start settling into the message. And once I'm a type of person, I realize, and I have to honor that, once I settle into it, I become more creative. I become more even vulnerable, because I can navigate it even though I don't know everything, but I feel like I have a handle on it. And so one of the most important things for me with that was that I could start to have conversations. And those conversations, or even sharing that framework, led to a level of trust, another level of trust I felt with my audience, where I could easily more guide them, like, okay, well, this is the offers that I have, and this would be the best for you. Those kinds of conversations happened more. And it also helped me even more chisel out my message, so much so that I was able to, like, even start my own, podcast centered around the message and centered around the women that I helped, that ease there, that I feel more in regards to the message, because I was more so like, before then, I was talking, but I was stalling. And then I was also overwhelmed because I felt like I knew too much, but I didn't really know how to like harness it and guide it and just really kind of get a handle on it. And so with that framework, I was able to drop my knowledge in those places and filter out how I wanted to talk to my audience. And so one of the biggest things for me was connection, because even centered around the brand, She Leads Authentically, which is the name of the podcast, connection is key. Before I try to even help anyone, I want these women to know that I hear them and I understand their story and I understand where they are. So connection is key. So that content and that framework helped, kind of did the heavy lifting for me.
No, that's so powerful. Now, I know you said that because you sent me a message, because I want to say during our sessions, I was like, girl, do you have a podcast? When is this up and coming? And you recently launched your podcast. So tell us a little bit about that and the types of conversations and the things that you're talking about on there.
Okay, so on my podcast is She Leads Authentically. And so one of the three things that I have within this podcast, I said that it's not going to be a bunch of jargon. I'm not a type of person, or I don't speak from a place of a lot of industry fluff. So I basically laid it out, even in my trailer, said that this is going to be a podcast of wisdom, therapy, and courage. Because ultimately, these women have the skills, they have what it takes. They need the wisdom to make the empowered decisions. They need the courage, to stand by their convictions. And they need the therapy in the sense of someone understanding and walking through that process, that framework, right? So that they can come to that place that they need to be to start confidently creating a purpose-driven path for themselves. So we're talking about external validation in the pursuits of success. We're talking about things like going beyond the ceiling in your leadership. One of our most popular episodes right now, why personal development isn't found in the self-help section, when I start to delve into how personal development is almost in a man's, or for men in their leadership package, so to speak, right? For women, it's not promoted that way. It's promoted as self-help. But if you want to grow in your leadership, you have to think of it beyond self-help, because self-help gives it a mindset of, I can get to that later. No, it must be also a part of your leadership journey, because I work with women right now, and we are talking about elevating their emotional intelligence so that they can navigate their career, whether they stay in corporate or leave. These are tools that they don't have right now. And why is that? But they're brilliant. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with also women, like a Forbes article talks about 90% of women in leadership. We're talking executive, not just, aspiring leaders, executive positions and up, where you would think that that's not happening. 90% of them are suffering from what they call or termed as a power gap. These power gaps are the self-doubts, the imposter syndrome, emotional intelligence, being afraid to ask for more. That's not an issue for men in leadership, because they have that, being male, they have that understanding of, or the audacity, right, to ask, without, nope, hey, can I get a raise or something? They're in these conversations. So what you doing? Why are, and if there is no place for you to grow here, why are you taking so long to move in another direction? Why does it have to take either being fired, laid off, however you want to put it, or department cutbacks or whatever, or just stuck in a position that you are not satisfied with? Why does it have to take this for you to now look at you? And I thought about myself, like, why did it have to take that for me? Mm-hmm. And that's autopilot. You just conditioned to move a certain way, and it almost has to take that to shock you out of the routine of settling. So we're talking about all those kinds of conversation. Our most recent episode also talked about detoxing from the pursuit of miserable success. And so that also has to deal with the autopilot and how we've created images and created this whole idea of what success is, right? And we're pursuing that idea. And so one of my jobs is going in to understand what those ideas are in these women in leadership. And does it really line up with the type of success that you actually want?
Yep.
And so,
like I said, like this.
Yeah, we're having like a really great time on this podcast.
And what I love, like all of these things that you were talking about, as we work together, like those were some of like your core foundational ideas that we had talked about, like, and how we can, one, explain this in a way. So, you were saying before, people are thinking like this is a later problem. It's not an urgent today problem. And how we can bring it to life to realize, like, no, this is a today problem. This is an urgent problem that you need to start working with. And so I'm loving that, those core foundations that we talked about before, like, are making its way into the podcast to really show and highlight, like, these are things that you need to be thinking about and that you have control. If it does take you, if it's being fired, being completely burned out, like these other things, like, you are there, you're a resource to help. But also, you don't have to wait until you get to that point. And then you're being there as a resource and talking about, like, here are the exit plans that you can create for yourself so that you're not reliant, and then you're not in this, like, flux of, like, okay, I don't know what to do next because, like, this big thing kind of, like, shook you up. Like, you can, like, take control again through the stories that you're telling, how you've helped other people to show the light. Like, that's really the power, I believe, of, like, being able to go back through, evaluate your stories and using that as a template and an example to show the people that you want to work with that there's a path, there's a better way. Like, that's the power of owning your story, owning the story of the people that you work with, and framing it in a way that gives people hope so that they can realize there's someone out there that can help. And so I love that this podcast is out in the world now.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing really well. So I was like, oh my gosh. And so, the numbers are the numbers and stuff like that. And I'm just like, okay, so y'all want to hear this? Y'all want to hear more about this and stuff like that? So I am super excited about where it's heading and just getting even more comfortable in that seat, that was something you threw out at me, and it was something on my mind. And so I took my own advice and I just created more of a space for me to harness and also cultivate even my genius. And so I tell the women on She Leads Authentically, I said, this podcast is my recommitment to myself. So even though I take you through the framework and I say, all right, now it's time to recommit. How are we recommitting to ourselves? I'm actually showing you physically, right, by showing up in this podcast, that I was at one point thinking that I didn't have a framework or had anything to say or leading people through a process. Now I'm here on a podcast, consistently leading you through a process and consistently creating more opportunities for myself, right, as I have recommitted to myself. So this podcast isn't just about, hey, I just want you to hear what I have to say. I'm here and you are looking at me being an example, navigating through my own recommitment, and this is a part of it. And so you can absolutely make empowered decisions for yourself to do the same.
I love this so much. thank you so much for spending time with us today. Before we completely wrap up, just let the people know how can they find you? How can they connect with you to learn more about your own genius? Because it is genius. It is brilliance.
Okay, so you know how we do this social media thing. I'm Kemerlin Rich on IG. It's KEMERLIN RICH on IG. I'm Kemerlin Richards on LinkedIn. Richards RICHARDS. You can check me out on my website at KemerlinRich.com. You see it's flowing, right? Everything is Kemerlin Rich. And also check me out on the podcast. She Leads Authentically is on all streaming platforms. You can check it out on Apple, Spotify, or whatever platform you love. She Leads Authentically.
Yeah, and this will all be linked in the show notes, so make sure that you go and check her out. Again, like I said, I was sitting here in our sessions together and just like, she's a star. Like, she just knows she's on it. And I'm so glad that you are sharing this genius and this brilliance to the world, because people need to hear this, and they need to know that there is someone has been through the things that they're going through, and that there is help out there for them to take control of their careers and redefine that for themselves, whether it's going someplace else in corporate or starting something all on their own. Like, there is help out there. Like, they can have guidance on that. They don't have to do this alone. So I'm so glad about the work that you do and the people that you're helping.
No, thank you for the work that you do, girl. I got a framework because of you. I'm like, I got a framework. I reconnected with my voice. I'm out here, navigating it and getting more comfortable. So, no, like, seriously, thank you. Because you was on my tail, so thank you.
I love it. Well,
it's like, no, but what is this?
It's a framework, because you got one.
Okay.
And at the end, I remember we were talking. It's like, do you feel like you own your voice? Because again, you came in hot when we first came in, and we were talking together. We were just like, so I'm not trying to sound like somebody else. And as we were wrapping up, we were just like, do you feel like you sound like yourself? You're just like, yes. You didn't try to make me sound like you or anybody else.
Yes,
I love that.
I
love it. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
All right. Awesome.
If you want more marketing that works right in your inbox, head to the show notes and sign up for the email list. You'll be the first to know how you can work with me on mastering your marketing.